Welcome to Running Hot, Action Network's Motorsports Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Young of Roto Grinders, better known as Stevie TPFL. This week, I'm talking bets for the Xfinity 500 here on Running Hot. Roto Doc is feeling a little under the weather, so we're wishing him the best and a speedy recovery. Riding solo on the podcast this week. Last week at Homestead, Christopher Bell finally put together a full race and clinched a spot in the championship. Ryan Blainey came home second. Reddick finished third, and Byron finished fourth. Chris Buscher had a rough day and finished 21st, which puts him 43 points below the cut line and in a must-win spot this weekend at Martinsville. Denny Hamlin hit the wall late. And right after that, Martin Truex Jr. had an engine issue. They finished 29th and 30th, which puts them both below the cut line, which makes for a very interesting weekend here at Martinsville. At Homestead last weekend, I think the racing was great. The tire fall off always makes a huge difference. We saw comers and goers, and we saw, like I said, Christopher Bell finally put together a full race. We've talked about it so many times on the podcast this year. Him and Kyle Larson are locked into the championship race next weekend at Phoenix. William Byron is in a really good spot. He's plus 30 to the cut line. Even with a new winner, if William Byron just has a solid day, there's a good chance that he's going to make it in on points. Ryan Blainey with back-to-back good races. He's plus 10 on the cut line. He comes into a racetrack that he's had really good success at. So he's in a great spot. But with Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, Chris Buscher below the cut line, all three of these guys are capable of winning this race. And I think it's going to make for a very exciting Martinsville race this weekend. Tyler Reddick's minus 10, Truex is minus 17, Hamlin's minus 17, and Chris Buscher is minus 43. It's going to be an exciting weekend at Martinsville. Looking at statistics, I think that Hamlin probably has the best chance to win this race and advance on a win. But I think Ryan Blainey is right there with him. I think Chris Buscher, if we look back at how fast Chris Buscher was at Richmond, another short flat track, he definitely has some potential. They've really been struggling here recently on tracks that we thought he was going to be a lot better at. So that's a little concerning for Chris Buscher. Tyler Reddick, he has mixed results at Martinsville. They're not great results. So I think he's on the outside looking in this weekend. What a great run for him just overall, but he comes in with a 62.5 driver rating at Martinsville. Started 6th, finished 22nd earlier this year. Had a much better race going than 22nd. Some late stuff happened where he got banged up in that race. So that's kind of it for the Homestead recap. Again, I think the racing was great. I think it's really awesome to see Christopher Bell put together a full race on pit road, on the track. They didn't have the best car at the beginning of the race. They made great adjustments to that car. They made great pit calls. And it was just really, really good to see him, win that race. And I think after what happened with Kyle Larson hitting the barrels coming to pit road, it was anybody's race. Ryan Blainey was right there. Denny Hamlin was there late before he hit the wall. Truex wasn't really there. I don't know what was going on with Martin Truex Jr. last weekend, but I think, like I said, I think Homestead was a great race, and hopefully everyone enjoyed it. We had a great week on Running Hot. We had a lot of big hits on Running Hot last week, so I think we had 2 top 10s for at least 5 units apiece hit, so that was really good. I know Doc had the Austin Dillon pick. I had the AJ Allmendinger pick. I think we had a couple other things hit. I think we had Ryan Blainey minus 110 for a top 10, and that was an easy one. So he absolutely crushed. Let's get into Martinsville. Martinsville is a half-mile flat track that is very unique because it is like a paperclip. It is a very short racetrack that has very technical corners, and it's a racetrack that's all about rhythm. We've had some packages here over the years where, there's so much data to look at for Martinsville with so many different packages to look at. Again, this weekend, we're going to see a new package as well with the tire. This is a tire they tested at Richmond in August. It's a brand new tire, left and right side tire that they're bringing to the racetrack. The thread thickness is higher, which, I mean, we'll have to kind of see how that plays out. We know that like NASCAR and Goodyear have been trying to do something with the tire and the car on these short flats. They tested a new spoiler that's not getting rolled out this weekend in August as well. But the drivers did say this tire had the most effect. So hopefully it's good. Hopefully it's good. I mean, that's all we can kind of go off of. I think that, typically with a tire change, we're a little concerned, but drivers that are consistently good at this racetrack, I think, are still going to benefit from being good at this racetrack. So I'm still looking at past data. I'm still looking at or earlier this season's race. I think that's definitely important. We can look at some of the short flats just in general. They're not the best comps, but they're a comp. So looking at Martinsville, you can also look at like Richmond, short flat, New Hampshire's a short flat, and Phoenix is a short flat. So again, Martinsville, the track itself is just so unique that it doesn't really comp the best to anywhere. So I think overall, when we're looking at this racetrack, I think that we just kind of look at past Martinsville, weigh that the most. And I think looking at the short flats from this season, we definitely want to weigh them a little bit because, that's the recent exposure that we have to the short flats. Martinsville was an April race, so it was a while ago. Recently, Phoenix, that was March. So looking at Richmond, which was, in July, which is our recent short flat, I think has some weight this weekend. So New Hampshire, it was another racetrack that was ran in July. So looking at those, recent short flats, there's a lot to look at, with that. Logano was fast. Truex was fast. Chris Buscher was really fast, like we mentioned a minute ago. So looking at all that and just kind of figuring out like who might have hit on something and who hasn't, and how can we take advantage of that with the books. And again, I'm really interested to see how this new tire kind of plays out. They had a lot of good feedback in the Richmond test with this tire. So will it be a difference maker? Yeah, I hope so. I hope it's something that, we can kind of look at. So, I think that's it for the preview. Again, this race in general, I think has the potential to be a little wild with the playoff situation. And, obviously you can't do the Hail Mailing anymore that Ross Chastain did last year. But Tyler Reddick, outside looking in, if he has the opportunity, I think like he's going to make some, aggressive pit calls late in this race if the opportunity comes up. We saw Briscoe do it last year. I think there was like 30 laps to go in that race, and Briscoe stayed out on tires, and he did the best he could. I think he led up until like 12 to go or 13 to go or something along those lines, and got past and then went backwards. But they tried to get in that way. So pit strategy definitely comes into effect. I think, like I said, raw speed wise, I'm assuming Hamlin, Buscher, Truex, Blainey, Byron, they're all going to be fast. And I think Bell and Larson are going to be fast as well. But with Larson kind of locked in and Bell kind of locked in, I think that they better stay out of the way of these other drivers because, it's going to be aggressive driving. Like Denny Hamlin has no problem putting the bumper to somebody. He's going to be aggressive. Truex is not as aggressive as like Denny Hamlin. So I think overall this race has the potential to be wild. And how does that affect betting? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about it as we're talking about some of these picks because, I'm playing that this race could get a little wild card into some of my bets this week. So I think there's some value in the betting market, and I think we should dive into some bets. As always, I'm going to take you for a lap around Martinsville. That's 4 turns, 1 pick from each turn before I dive into victory lane. 5 picks this week with RotoDoc being under the weather. So let's get into our turn one pick for Martinsville. All right, my turn one pick this week is going to be Ryan Preece, top 10 plus 160. Really like this one. This is one that my model shows a lot of value to. Obviously, Ryan Preece started on the pole here earlier this year, led 135 laps, had 25 fastest laps, ended up finishing 15th in that race. He was really good at the start of that race and then had some issues. He still ranked inside the top 10 in speed. So we're getting this at plus money. Ryan Preece is really good at the short flats, and I think that this is a racetrack where Ford showed a lot of speed. Stewart-Haas showed a lot of speed in general at this racetrack earlier this year. And if we look back to New Hampshire and Richmond, our recent short flats, Preece had struggled, and then the race that he didn't struggle, he finished fifth. So, like, I do think that, like, Ryan Preece has that ability and that upside to finish inside the top 10. Really like his opportunity to potentially start inside the top 10 again. Like I said, Stewart-Haas kind of dominated qualifying here earlier this year, and I wouldn't be shocked if that happens again. Again, I'm very high on the Fords this weekend just in general. This has been a really good racetrack type for the Fords this year. So I'm gonna be kind of early week betting the Fords, and again looking at the starting lineup for earlier this year, there were 5 Fords inside the top 10. Preece started on the pole, Amarola started third, Briscoe started fourth. So again, I think if you get the track position at Martinsville, it's huge. It's such a track position type of race. So I like Ryan Preece's chances to start inside the top 10. I like his chances to run inside the top 10 most of the day. Hopefully he can avoid issues. And if he does that, I like his chances for a top 10 here at plus 160. Let's go into turn 2 at Martinsville. Got to accelerate, after we lay it down in the flat, short corner. My turn 2 pick this week is going to be Chase Briscoe for a top 10. I'm going to his Stewart-Haas teammate, like I said, with Preece. Really like the Fords this week, and Chase Briscoe, you can get him at plus 150 for a top 10 this week. Again, another driver that I really like heading into the weekend. He started 4th in this race earlier this year. He finished 5th. He had 51 fastest laps and he had 109 laps led in that race. He ranked 3rd in green flag speed and 3rd in speed overall in that race. He was fast all race long. I mean, if we look back to last year with Chase Briscoe, I talked about how they stayed out late and ended up finishing 10th in that race. Had they put tires on, they would have easily finished better than 10th. But with the new car at this racetrack, Chase Briscoe, the 3 races, he's finished 9th, 10th, and 5th. So the fact that we're getting him at plus money here and how good Stewart-Haas was earlier this year, I think this is a really nice value bet here early in the week. I mean, I have another top 10 that I really like in turn 3, and I'm just kind of taking advantage of some of this value on the top 10 market heading into the weekend. Again, the tires have me a little concerned, so like I haven't gone crazy with my outrights this week, early in the week. So I really like the spot for Chase Briscoe. He's really good at short flats. Even if we look at the recent short flats with New Hampshire and Richmond, he finished 10th and 11th in those 2 races. So just a really good racetrack type for him and a really good racetrack type for Stewart-Haas. I think this is a great spot to get his top 10. And again, like I said, I think there's solid value in this top 10 bet. My model is showing value again, and we're just going to take advantage of some of these top 10. The top 10 market seems nice this week, and we kind of talked a little bit about it last week, and we hit that top 10 market last week, and it worked out. But even in the 5 short flats this season, Chase Briscoe, his average finish is 9th, and again, it's really solid for getting it at plus money. You know what everyone loves? Compliments. And compliments are guaranteed after making the leap to skincare with Caldera Lab. And I'm talking about how you look today and 20 years from now. The results are incredible in little time. Men's skincare at Caldera Lab are the perfect pair for you to look and feel your best. Super easy to add to your morning and nightly routine. Clear skin, less wrinkles, and signs of aging. Enough said. Caldera Lab Skincare. Join the other 100,000 men who trust Caldera Lab to show your best first impression this fall. Now, Caldera Lab knows the skincare world is heavily female driven and has long been the Wild West for men. That's why they're making the solution simple with just 3 easy steps. The clean slate, which is a face wash to start and end your day. The base layer, which is a daily moisturizer to hydrate your skin. And the good, which is the eye serum you can put on at night to help your skin look tighter and smoother. And just for our audience, we have an exclusive deal. Use code RUNNING at calderalab.com and get 20% off right now. That's 20% off with code RUNNING at calderalab.com. Make unforgettable first impressions with Caldera Lab. Let's head into turn 3. Got to hit the brakes a little bit and slow this car down to get through this corner and be able to accelerate off of turn 4. My turn 3 pick this week, I'm going to go back to another top 10. Shocking. Again, I think there's a lot of value in the top 10 market this week. I'm going to go to Chris Buscher, top 10, plus 125. Chris Buscher on the outside looking in. I think they're going to be aggressive, which, I mean, I think he's someone you could potentially take for an outright bet this week. I want to kind of see if they have the raw speed in practice or not. They did struggle a little bit for raw speed at this track earlier this year. You know, he was someone that ranked, I think he ranked like 21st in speed here earlier this year. So I'm a little concerned about the raw speed to win this race. But if we look at the recent short flats, I mean, he's been one of the best cars. And I think maybe they hit on something. Maybe that's just a good racetrack for him. We'll kind of see how it plays out. But I think getting this at plus money for a top 10 this week is really nice value. Again, the aggressiveness worries me, but it also gives him a better chance to get a top 10. So looking at it overall, the speed wasn't there earlier this year, but the speed has definitely been there at the recent short flats, and hopefully they kind of hit on something where they can kind of apply it to Martinsville. And he needs a good qualifying effort is what he needs. Brad Keselowski is fantastic at this racetrack, and he's had a lot of good results. So working with Chris Buscher, I think they can kind of nail out what Buscher's issue is here. And I think the speed for Fords in general is going to be there again this weekend. Again, like I've talked about already, very high on the Fords. I didn't even realize it, but like all 5 bets that I have for this week are Fords. And wasn't on purpose. I really like the Fords this week. I really like Chris Buscher for a top 10. I mean, he's going to be aggressive. He's minus 43 on the cut line. Does he stay out late in the race? If he does, I mean, because of how Martinsville is kind of set up with how short it is and the track in general, if he stays out with 30 laps to go, I could see his tires holding on just enough for him to have a chance to finish inside the top 10. So again, I want to see the raw speed before I look at Chris Buscher for a race win, but getting him early in the week at a top 10 at plus money seems like really nice value. So Chris Buscher, top 10 plus 125, turn 3 pick here on Running Hot. All right, we're accelerating through the corner now, and we're going to go to turn 4 here on Running Hot. Turn 4 pick this week for me is going to go back to the Fords, and I'm going to go race winning manufacturer Ford plus 220. I get it. The Chevys and Toyotas have dominated this season, and I understand that, and I'm not going to be here arguing that. Even if we look at the 5 short flats this year, we've had Chevy win 3, Truex won 1, and Chris Buscher won the other. So only 1 out of the 5 races has been won by a Ford. But if we go back to earlier this year at Martinsville, Kevin Harvick was the fastest car. Chase Briscoe was the 3rd fastest car. Eric Almirola was the 4th fastest car. So 3 of the top 4 fastest cars at Martinsville earlier this year were Fords. We could keep adding in Ryan Blainey and Ryan Preece for top 10 speed, as far as like 5 of the top 10 drivers in speed were Fords. So getting Fords as the huge dog in this manufacturer race this weekend just seems like a bet that I'm interested in. And looking at it overall, again, Kevin Harvick, fastest car. Chase Briscoe had a ton of speed. Eric Almirola had a ton of speed. And they dominated qualifying here earlier this year as well. Preece started first, Almirola started third, Briscoe started fourth, Kevin Harvick started seventh, and Buscher started 10th. So they had 5 of the top 10 starting positions as well. Martinsville is such a huge race when it comes to track position. I think this is a great spot for the Fords to pick up a win. I mean, like looking at the playoff picture too, Ryan Blainey is one of my favorite drivers this weekend. We talked about Chris Buscher. Is he going to have that raw speed? But don't count out Stewart Haas. Like you could even extend this bet a little bit more if you want to for a little bit more risk and just say race winning team is going to be Stewart Haas this weekend. Because I really think that Stewart Haas, the speed that they had earlier this year is definitely something that we need to be talking about. So if you want to extend this bet even a little bit further and just say, Stewart Haas is going to be the race winner, not just Ford. I don't hate that depending on what kind of numbers you're going to get. Most books don't post those type of odds until after qualifying. So definitely something to pay attention to after qualifying. It's very interesting this week. I really like the Fords. So again, turn 4, race winning manufacturer Ford plus 220. That's it for the 4 turns. Now we've taken the checkered flag and we're heading to Victory Lane to send ourselves off to the NASCAR Cup Series Championship. But before we do that, my Victory Lane pick this week, I'm going to go to Ryan Blainey at plus 1,100, so 11-1 to win this race. Again, I got this earlier this week at plus 1,400, so 14-1. Really like that number. My model is showing this as, really solid value still. Ryan Blainey is fantastic at Martinsville. I think the way that it's going to set up this weekend is he's going to need a really good run if he's not going to get it on points. But, I mean, if Hamlin and Truex are up there battling or Buscher are battling for this win, I mean, Blaney's got to get up there and win this race. And I think he's very capable. He's finished inside the top 10 in 6 of the last 10 races here at Martinsville. With the new car, he's finished 4th, 3rd, and 7th. He's had some of the best speed and just has been very consistent at this racetrack. So really like Ryan Blainey. Again, I really liked it at 14-1. I still like it at 11-1. So I think that my thing with the 11-1 number and why I still wanted to get Blainey at 11-1 was if he does have a lot of speed in practice and qualifying, which I'm expecting him to have really solid speed, then we're going to be getting Blainey closer to like 7 or 8-1. So this is why I'm jumping on this one. Again, I don't have a lot of outrights this week. This is a week where I really want to kind of see how this tire is going to do in practice and in qualifying. But I think Ryan Blainey at 11-1, still really solid value. If you could find that 14-1 number, really like that, but it's not out there from what I could see anymore. So jumping on Ryan Blainey at 11-1 to take us to Victory Lane here at Martinsville. That'll do it for us here. Thanks for listening to the Xfinity 500 episode of Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. We'll be back this time next week to talk about bets for the NASCAR Cup Series Championship at Phoenix Raceway. Yes, the championship is here. Next week will be our final episode of the season on Running Hot. I hope everyone has enjoyed. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you back here next week on Running Hot from Action Network.